on. Why do you think vampires are so attractive to us?
It's one of the issues why we made the film, is we wanted to investigate that, and it's been really fascinating actually listening to all of our interviewees discussing why they were drawn to either creating vampire material or appearing in vampire material. I think all of us deal with the fact that we're mortal, and we all wish that we weren't. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to stay at the prime of your life forever? I think that's probably the main appeal.
I think that's about right. I mean, I think there's a big part of it too. I mean, they are us, and but I think the immortality is a big part of it.
I think so as well. I think that when I look at how much of my attention is taken up daily and on some level with the insecurities of being mortal. So it would be fear of death, fear of illness. Vampires always seem to have money. Just taking away any concerns about money from our lives. Can you imagine how much more energy we would have to devote to other things? Not losing a loved one. A lot of stories are about a mortal and an immortal falling in love and the dream of turning that person. And I think probably 95% of my attention units would be freed up by not have to, as an actress, no more aging. Are you kidding? So
I'm good with that one.
Right? I know, you don't want to be turned when you're 80, so which is very kind of writers and producers to always turn us when we're still cool looking, and then they always help us by dressing us cool, and on True Blood in the beginning, in one conversation, it may have been with Alan, there was in the first season a vampire trial. Stephen Moyer, Vampire Bill had done something bad, I forget what he'd done. And so he had to turn baby vamp Jessica, and he didn't want to do this. And they had talked about how that scene would look, and they had said that we were going to have like a refrigerator repairman who had been turned, and just people, average people walking around in life, the U-Haul guy, the UPS guy. And I thought that was so brilliant. And then I got there on the day, and it looked like the Thriller video. Because they decided, no, let's not ruin it. Let's keep everybody looking like, the Rolling Stones or something, looking cool. So, yes, that's my theory.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I think it's really about us releasing the tether from the normalcy of this life and having the power to do whatever you want to do. And, just being able to, just exist on your own terms. And I think that's what I really like.
What's the first vampire film you all saw?
Bela Lugosi's Dracula was mine.
That was the Night Stalker.
Mine was it George Hamilton? And I was pretty young, and I remember in Wisconsin in the middle of winter, after my mom put me to bed, going over and opening the window, like hoping. And it was, amazing that I ended up playing a vampire. That, somehow this person would come and bite me and take me away to some magical place. And I just got really sick, is what happened. I got a cold.
For me, it was the Hammer film, Dracula, Christopher Reeves.
Okay, this is a question for you, Kristen. Did you have as much fun playing Pam as it looked? What was the best part of creating that character? And Charlene Harris has said that is her favourite character as well. Why do you think that is?
We've done panels as a whole cast, and often when the other characters are asked, who would you want to play on the show besides yourself, a lot of people say Pam. And I think I got very lucky. I think it was a combination of things. The writing is where it starts, and ends, actually. The dialogue that I was handed was just pure gold to me, the things that got to come out of my mouth that only would end up airing on HBO. So again, I was on a network that didn't have to run it by advertisers. And, you know, I mean, gash in a sundress, this is really gonna air? And I kept saying, this is never gonna air. And I kept trying to think of what I would be looping, smash in a pun plus, you know, like there's nothing that we could make my mouth fit to that, and it aired. So, and then the other thing was the people that I was with. You know, that's the gold in a business, is because casting people and producers assemble your family, and you sort of go, hello, so you're my maker and my eternal love. What's your name again? And then, and action. And I got really lucky that we all loved each other. And then, I mean, it goes on and on with that show, but the wardrobe, the hair, and the makeup. So after 2 hours in hair and makeup, I used to walk onto the set, and everyone would be very busy trying to work, and I would come out and go, and I wouldn't stop until everybody stopped what they were doing and acknowledged what Audrey Fisher had created. And then I would say, okay, back to work. Because that wasn't Kristen, that was the art of each department. So I honestly felt like I was only 10% of Pam. All the people you couldn't see are what created that, and that's what made me have so much fun doing it, because it was a true collaboration.
I love that. Juliet, how did you get the role of Drusilla?
Joss had seen my work in Ed Wood and another film, and actually called me in for a meeting, and I thought I was going to be reading, but I wasn't. And then we had like this incredibly creative conversation. It was Joss, Gail Berman, the producer, and David Greenwald, and a number of people in the room, and we kind of bounced ideas off each other, and it had said in the material the character could be English or American, and I was like, oh no, she needs to be this way, and I kind of did something in the room where I wafted up to the ceiling, and kind of did a little bit of Drew, and they're like, oh my god! And before I walked to my car, I literally was like, still walking on the lot, my phone rang and my agent was like, what did they're booking you, like immediately. And I was like, oh, that's great. And it was just one of those kind of kismet-y moments that was really amazing. And then they paired me with the final choices for Spike, and the minute that James came in, it was kind of funny, he came in Southern, and they were like, oh no, the character is English, and he was like, oh okay, and we switched. And then we had all these incredible things happen in the audition. The first episode where we're introduced, where we're talking to the Anointed One, for anyone that knows the show, it was in James's audition where we were reading with Marsha Shulman, the casting director, and I was already cast, and we were working together, and we just kind of like looked at each other, and our heads kind of just leaned, and we kind of took forever. We just had our heads, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, he's there, and we turned out. And they ended up using that in the first episode, and they actually used it as all the promos when we'd be leaning in and had our heads turning out, and they said, evil has a few blue faces. And then we turned out. So it was really cool, because it was one of those things with James that he was a theatre actor, and we immediately just had an acting chemistry that just was like, you know, oh, you're putting the ball here, and I'm putting the ball there, and it was one of those things that just from right in its inception just caught fire.
How did you get the role of Pam?
That's such a great story. That never happens, by the way.
No, it never happens.
That never happens that the phone rings before. Mine was not that. You know, your managers and agents, they're very excited when they get you these great auditions. So they will call and say, it's Alan Ball, it's HBO, it's vampires, and you're like, la 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 la, because the more that you want it. Yeah, the pressure builds and builds. So I heard Alan Ball, I was like, I'm good, I'm in. Then the HBO, I was like, I'm really in, stop talking. Then he said vampire, and I was like, shut the fuck up, because I have to go in that room. And for my whole career, I had done sitcoms, which I loved, but they went the way of the dinosaur for a minute, and so I had to adapt or go extinct as well. And dramas, I had a very hard time getting into dramas. I had a very hard time people seeing me as edgy. So I read this script and saw that the sides, I didn't get to read a script, and Pam had just these snarky lines that they cut together. So it didn't even really make sense. It didn't make any sense. It was like unrelated, bitchy comments. And so I thought, all right, how can I say this as caustic and as blunt as I possibly can? And the only way I could do that was to change my voice. And so I went in, did it. Alan Ball was there, and he said, thanks. And I left, and 3 weeks later they called and said, come back in and do it again. And I said, why? I did it. They filmed it. Are there more people in the room? No. So why? Because what it means is they're uncertain. You did some things right, you did some things maybe they're unsure of, and you can't know what you did that you shouldn't do again and what you should do more of. So I went in and did the exact same thing again. Look, this is my snake oil that I'm selling, take it or leave it. And 3 weeks go by, I'm in the Philippines shooting a movie, and the producer came in and had a text. I remember her scrolling through her BlackBerry saying, we have to get you out on the day we said we would because you were starting a series the next day. And it was just a guest star recurring at that point though, and they said, I said, what was it? And she goes, hold on, let me find out. Oh, True Blood. And I said, what was that one? And she goes, oh, let me see, HBO. I was like, oh, cool, I wanted that. But it hadn't aired, and I didn't know any of the people, and I flew in, 17 hours, 14 hours wrong time, straight to my thing, fitting my wardrobe fitting, straight to a night shoot, met Skarsgård, and was so tired. He was speaking Swedish, and for some reason I said, are you speaking Cambodian? And he went, and I thought, I don't like him. And he thought, I don't know, she's retarded. And then, I know, we're not supposed to say that word anymore, but you know what I mean. And then we went our separate ways until 4 a.m. shooting this crazy scene. We started laughing and we bonded for life.
I was just going to say my other kind of funny casting story, which is not exactly vampire related, except that it's with Tim Burton, so Edward, there was Bela in that movie. I was reading for Edward, and I was doing a night shoot, and so I came in and I had been basically up all night, and the casting director was the woman who cast me in my first job ever. And she put me on tape, and I left the office, and I get this call, and it's like she's saying you don't usually get called really fast. I'm like, oh my god, my agent's calling, and she's like, did you take the bathroom key? And I was like, I don't know, I didn't take the bathroom key, no, not at all. And then I opened my bag and I had this humongous, it was like with a hanger, it was so big, and I actually stuck it in my bag right before the audition. I was like, yeah, did they like, well, it's the only copy, so can you actually go back? Where are you? And I'm like, I'm in the car. Yeah, I can go back. And I had to do like the walk of shame and kind of come in the office with this gigantic hanger and be like, here, and whatever. And so then a week later, they call, and I literally, my agent goes, so they called, I'm like, I don't have the key anymore. No, they're actually offering you the job. And I'm like, oh, thank goodness.
Steve, 30 Days of Night, how did it come about for you?
Well, actually, the first thing that came about was the location. I was reading about, this small town and, the northernmost point where it goes dark for, it's actually 55 days. And I was like, 30 days sounded better. So it was just, once I discovered the town, it just seemed like it was a natural place to have vampires in it.
Was it, how much did it evolve for you? What was your process in that? Because it's such a dark and powerful story.
Well, I work with an artist on that. So, you know, in this case, the co-creator is Ben Templeton. And, you know, every step of the way, we just bounced ideas off each other. But where this idea came from was I had a list of rejected movie pitches. Because I had pitched that around for quite a few years to no response. And then the publisher picked that off the list of rejected ideas that we would just do as a comic book. And then,
But also, is it true you never met, how long was it before you actually met Ben Temple-Smith?
about a year or two, because he was in Australia.
But so he drew it, you never actually were in a room together, right?
No, we did everything. There wasn't even really Skype at that point, so it was just email back and forth.
Okay, Kevin, Underworld, how did it come about? What does Underworld mean to you? What is the metaphor for Underworld? Because I love this story.
I guess if you look at the metaphor, it would be, it's about race relations. You know, because the way I pitched it to the director was that it was a surrealistic interracial love story that spanned the length of this centuries-old race war. And that's how I came up with it, you know, but I have to thank Lynn, because Lynn was the one who prompted me or created the environment for me to come up with, you know, this great idea. It started because he was a music video director, and he had a meeting at Dimension way back in the day, and they wanted to do a werewolf movie. They did for werewolves what Blade did for vampires. So he said, well, do you have any ideas? And I didn't at first, but I said, just give me a week and let me come up with something. So I came up with an idea that after a week, didn't like it. He says, well, we went back and forth. He says, well, you know, maybe we ought to get together and talk about it. So went over to his apartment. We worked all day trying to bang out the story. And in the back of my mind, I had this other story that I wanted to tell. Now, one of the things about Hollywood is that you can set up a pitch meeting, you know, to pitch an idea. But when you have a general, you're trying to figure, you know, feel the producers out or the creative executives out. And, you know, to gauge what they might want, what they might be looking for, things like that. So I said, well, look here, dude, we can't go in there with just one idea. We have to have at least two. So he's like, well, I don't have anything. I came to you, and I said, okay, just hear me out. What if we did this surrealistic, kind of like this Romeo and Juliet story, but instead of Montagues and Capulets, you have werewolves on one side, and you have vampires on the other side. And you make it this surrealistic, like interracial love story, you know, between these two monsters who hate each other when they're both monsters, you know what I'm saying? Which was the ridiculous aspect of it, you know, we hate you because you look like this, or we hate you because you do this, blah, blah, blah. And so the hybrid became like the, you know, the abomination, the interracial love child of this union, who was hated by both, and you know that's kind of how that all evolved. And of course, after you write the script, it evolves, and but that was the impetus for the whole thing.
Kristen, Pam is very different in the books. Did you read the books at all? And you know, her look is so vastly different in the books. What was that like? Did you have any part of that discussion?
I didn't have a part of it. I was informed of it. You know, I was just thinking, tagging on to what you were saying, is that I think is so interesting is that these movies that are so incredibly entertaining to watch, I think the other reason why they stand the test of time is that there are layers of metaphors to what we deal with in life, like race relations, anti-gay, and that was Alan Ball's arena. But he had said, if he had been black, especially in 50s and 60s, that's the metaphor that he would have been using in True Blood. But it's the same thing. And that I don't know how much that translates, but for the creators, that's interesting to me, and for the actors, because that is in our minds and something that we grab onto to play. Pam I didn't know there were books because it happened so kind of fast there at the end. And I flew in and they told me, and I started reading the first book with that's God talking to me. Is that going? Can we shut the door and maybe help us, or is it next door? Okay. So I started reading the book with the first season with the strips, and then I kept reading the second book, but Pam wasn't in it too much, and then the second year it started veering so differently, and the wardrobe person had put so much effort into researching the book. When I saw her paper clips, thank you, on the top of the pages, it made the book look like this, like some sort of metal creation. So again, I didn't have to, worry about that. We were so well taken care of by each department.
I was going to say one of the things that you guys touched on, which is the central part of the film, as you saw from the thing, is that all of the creatives had used vampirism in such a myriad and diverse way of looking at the human condition. So exactly, race relations, gay, rights, addiction, loss. With Joss, it was high school as a nightmare, which most people can relate to. There's such a wide range, and that's one of the things that's so fascinating. And each of our narrative films is inspired by a different metaphor that the creators talk about.
Steve, can you talk about, you wanted to create vampires that were truly monstrous. Why was that? That was
really just, I wanted to do a scary vampire story. So I thought, strip away the romanticism, strip away all that stuff, so that they look at you like you can't be. All they want is your blood, and that's it. So I thought that was incredible, frightening idea.
Can you talk about when you went to your therapist and you gave that person 30 days of night, and what happened?
Oh, well, my ex-therapist,
Yes.
decided that everything that I was about invading the mind, and blood, that I had problems with blood, and I was terrified of blood, and it just weren't true.
Or maybe they are. Kristen, how did playing Pam change your life?
It changed my life in so many ways. For one, I spent 7-8 months of the year living half the week at night with these people in this, petri dish. We just started so isolated, and we also shot the entire show before it would start airing. So we didn't have a feeling of trying to please an audience. The network was so lovely that we didn't even have a feeling of trying to please the network executives. They weren't ever there. And so we just kind of hung out with our buddies and played. And, got extremely tired, which made us extremely giddy. So I've never laughed so hard in my life as I did with Alex. And then if you say the word Alex, I always cry. It's like a button you can always push. But, and then also what was amazing about it is as the years went, year 2 or 3 or 4, I can't remember, but I was at Home Depot getting something, covered in paint, hadn't showered in a couple of days, and someone went, "You're Pam," and I was like, "Oh shit, okay, that's different. I need to think about what I'm wearing, maybe, possibly." And so I could actually feel a barometer of how the show was doing by walking around in the world, and it's incredible to create something. We love creating things. We only get to keep creating things if other people share it with us and share it with others, and that's what you're getting to be part of now with this movie. You can help share that this movie gets to be finished and made, and that's this collaboration, that to be part of that tidal wave is really awesome, because it means I'm making something and people are seeing it, and then I get to do more of it. It's incredible.
Juliet, how did Drusilla change your life?
In so many ways, and in terms of I've got to meet so many incredible people. I think a lot of the people that are here are probably Drusilla fans, and so getting to interact with you guys has really just been unbelievable. And I think just coming to this day, to be doing this film, I wouldn't be here doing this film, we wouldn't be having this discussion with these amazing people if I hadn't if Joss hadn't invited me in.
Kevin, Underworld, what did it do for your life?
Really, it changed me from being a fan like you guys, into a professional. And that's why I have such a great time coming to all these conventions, because every time I meet one of you guys, I'm meeting myself, and that's really fun because I never had that real outlet when I was a kid, I went to my first convention, I think when I was 12, but prior to that, when you're in, wherever we were living at the time, I think Boston, watching Channel 56 and looking at, creature features, it's like, there was nothing like it, it's a whole new world. So, but in reality, it was the fact that Underworld gave me some validation, because, when you're a kid or even when you're an adult, trying to break into Hollywood, you're wondering if you really have the stuff. And when someone buys something that basically said, yeah, you got it, now let's do something with it. So that's how it changed my life.
Steve, the question is, what has 30 Days of Night done for your life?
Oh, it gave me my career, really. I was 33 when it took off, and I had drawers full of stuff that I had written. So for a while there, I was known for being very prolific, but all I was doing was emptying drawers. Stuff that I had written for years.
Okay, I'm going to ask these guys one last question each, and then we're going to open it up. Would you choose eternal life?
No. Aside from Jesus Christ in heaven, no, not on this planet.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the system is built a certain way for a reason, and ultimately everything here is temporary, and we need to go home. I think we've got it a little upside down, possibly, where this starts to feel very too real and too permanent and scary in some ways. And we're afraid to die. I have a feeling we have it upside down and that it's worked out perfectly. So I hope I would be evolved enough to say no. I mean, it's like someone handing you $1 million cash to do something horrible. You really hope that you would go, no.
Same exact thing. I just think this is more than enough.
I would definitely say no in terms of me having to kill people and drink blood and all that. If I got to spend, now you're going to press my button. If I got to be with you forever, get checked out. Then I would definitely go for it.
Okay, we're going to give it. What did Joss? This was funny. Do you remember what Joss said?
Oh yeah, you can quote it though. So.
Joss said, "What I want to be pudgy and bold
for eternity."
Because
I don't think so.
And Gary said,
"Oh,
I'll be
he's
pretty
like,
glad when it's over."
Yeah, and then he goes, "I certainly wouldn't live here."
All right, I'm going to open up. We can do some questions for a minute. Do we have some questions? Isis.
Knowing that vampires came from pre-ancient Rome, is it interesting to you to know that we came from such a great place of fear for them to a place where they're valued and society, in terms of pop culture, appreciates them almost more than any other monster creature?
The only thing I can say about that is that I think we appreciate them because they're monsters that look human. And they don't have this, twisted morphology, you know what I'm saying, aside from the teeth. So I think that makes them more identifiable. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think so too, because they look like us, so they really reflect us in that way.
Cool, another question? Yes, you.
One of the things I thought was really interesting about 30 Days of Night is in the scheme, when you look at a lot of vampire movies throughout film, was the use of making analogous to sharks and how they look like sharks, act like sharks, And it was kind of a fresh take on a very well-known theme. Where did that come from and how did that develop? Was it already in mind with the comic, or at that time when you were coming up, or did it evolve as you got?
Yeah, well, like I said, we really just wanted to do something scary. And when I started talking to Ben Templesmith, we both agreed what we wanted was land sharks. So when we described it, and if you see Ben's artwork especially, you see that he really lends itself to a more frightening vampire.
Another question.
Sorry, I love True Blood. What was your favorite season to film and why?
There were so many that were great for different reasons and so many days and moments, luckily. I do remember in season 4 when I got the rotting face, being very excited because it was my first storyline that was independent of everybody else. So I felt like I graduated to get my own thing. And then, 5 hours in prosthetics for a little bit. I was also glad when that ended. But the last season, because we knew it was the last season, I was an emotional wreck the whole year because everything was the last first table read. And this was the last, everything was the last. And then once it really was the last, there's a certain preciousness. Again, why it's probably good to stay immortal. But we took that last year, we savored every moment. And it was really very beautiful and precious and amazing.
I have a question. If you could do someone else's project and work on it, who would you choose? What would you choose?
Like a different job or a different project?
A different vampire genre thing, if it's a different vampire genre.
I would say, give me a crack at Blade.
For sure. Anyone else? No one else? All right, we'll move on. Another question. Yeah.
What was the inspiration for Drusilla's type of crazy? She's very specific and crazy.
Thank you. When I was, after the audition that I talked about, Joss actually said, let's have a creative meeting where I tell you I've had Spike and Drew running around in my head for 10 years. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then he said, I want to tell you all about the mythology of the show. And I said, well, some of that I know, and he said, yeah, let me tell you about the show and also what I see for your character. And so I had this meeting, which I actually left rather confused initially because he said it was incredible, and it's what ended up being what was so amazing about the role is that there was so much dimension and so multifaceted and so many colors. But he said, she's really childlike, but she's very sensual. She's very delicate, but she's really strong. She's really innocent, but she's diabolical. And everything he said, I was like, okay, how am I gonna, she's really cruel, but she's loving. And, and then I started playing with the ingredients of the character and the kind of physicality, and the voice came out of that actually really, and all of the things. And he also said, we were the Sid and Nancy of the vampire set. And
who's Sid?
Well, this is the funny thing. Recently, I was with James, and we were doing a panel, and for the first time, he found out I was Sid. He was like, you were Sid? I was like, yeah, I pulled from Sid. You were the blondie, you